Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. Welcome, everybody. Blue Collar Mystics. I got one of my favorite Blue Collar Mystics here on the podcast, the great and mighty Wonder Woman herself, Abby Johnson.
Hi.
Yeah, one of the secret, not so secret society members of the good guys.
We're definitely secret.
Well, you guys are not good at keeping secrets, but you're crushing it though out front.
Hey, thank you.
It's awesome. I really enjoyed seeing you guys hang out in IRL over the weekend. That was very cool.
It was amazing. That was it was up there with, one of the best weekends of my life. So
that's pretty cool. I think we need to remember to connect more, and do things for ourselves more in real life. I think this book helps us to do that. This big, thick, insanely long book that we're reading through. Just a quick reminder to everybody, I made a little summary. It might be helpful if you want to dip your toe. I recommend reading the whole book, though. I always will and always have. I've read this book dozens of times over the past 8 years, and I swear to God, it just gets better.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that like reading the first chapter again, I'm like, what the heck? I don't remember any of this. I mean, I remember it, but there's so much more information than I realized.
It's a lot. The first chapter is very dense. It's got a lot of theory in it, because he's talking about quantum physics.
Quantum physics, yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually going into the heart of it.
Right. And so honestly, to me, reading the first chapter, you want to read it first. It's the first chapter for a reason, but honestly, it makes more sense after you've digested the book. In my opinion, but we can talk a little bit about it because I'm not a quantum physicist, and I know how your mind works. So I know you're very good at kind of dissecting the stuff and being able to lay it out. But we can talk a little bit about it. He's introducing the theory of things and the concept and what he calls the alternatives model.
Yeah, it's really great. Just to hear him reword it, to go back through it and hear what he says, that basically the only constant in this entire universe, realm, whatever you want to call it, this reality, is the idea of variability. So there isn't one, this is where you get into the whole flat earth versus the globe earth and then NASA lovers and everybody, honestly, you're going to find evidence for your theory. You will find all the evidence you need for your theory, but then there's going to be evidence to support the other theory too, all in abundance. And I think especially people who are tuning into this, you've heard both. Probably you might have an idea of what you think, or you're like me, where you're like, no, this is just a total digital, simulation. But the whole idea is that variability, there will be evidence to find it all, like the whole um, dot and slit. What is it called? The
double slit experiment.
double slit experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, he talks about that a little bit. He talks about how scientists are testing for what the fundamental, like makeup of reality is, and that they test for like waves, and then they test for particles. And when they test for waves, they get waves. And when they test for particles, they get particles.
It's
And
whatever you expect to see is what's going to be there.
right. It's like yeah, like we said last week, the reticular activation system. That's a big word. It's like that's an old school thing, but it's like the part of your brain that points out to you what you need to pay attention to, or what you need to what you're looking for. So if, like, for instance, if you've ever been like, oh, I want to buy like a Honda Civic or like a minivan or a Jeep or whatever, you start seeing them everywhere because you're actively looking for those things. And so confirmation bias is kind of what we're talking about. And even just to use it to your advantage, or at least don't use it to your disadvantage, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, the intro is, and I think the direct quote is like, variability is the world's most fundamental quality. And like anybody, we all have this like fundamental need to be right about our universe and how reality works and what is going on here. And it's funny because this actually reminds me a lot of Robert Anton Wilson's work. And one of my favorite books ever, if people are familiar with it, is Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. And in that book, he talks about how we kind of develop, like he talks about sort of a consciousness model in there. And it goes right along with David Hawkins and Vadim Zeland's too. But one of the things that he talks about is what he calls a reality tunnel. So he says that you have your own reality tunnel in a way that you experience the world, and everyone has their own. So in the whole idea of like consensus reality, that we're all sort of influencing the world together, then each of us is contributing what Vadim calls a layer of the world. And so the layer of the world in Vadim's work is the same as Robert Anton Wilson's reality tunnel. And what Robert Anton Wilson would do is he would change the way that he viewed the world to see how he interacted with it. For instance, he would become a vegetarian. And then when he would walk through the meat aisle, he would feel a grief inside of him for all the dead animals that he walked past. Then he would change his diet and he would no longer feel that like empathy or compassion toward the dead animals, for instance, because he knew that his reality tunnel, or his layer of the world, was malleable, and that variability would affect the way his view of the world and how he interacted with it.
That's super interesting.
So people who are crazy, right? Like their perspective, their perception of the world is just as valid as someone who's sane, because they're experiencing that, right? It's not
Yeah, they're experiencing it in their reality, their version of what's happening.
Exactly. So he's talking about that a little bit in the first part of the book, and that's kind of setting the fundamental premise, but it does get into some pretty complex kind of like concepts and stuff. But I would say like that is the basic gist, is that he's trying to introduce is that whatever it is that we're looking for, seeking in the world, we're going to find that. We're going to see it, and we will see it in that way, like Robert Anton Wilson talked about and proved with his whole like idea of a reality tunnel.
And he explains it as the space of alternatives, or the alternative space. So he goes into the whole idea that, there are infinite lifelines. Like he says, like when you're drinking a cup of coffee, you should actually imagine yourself drinking it in like you're drinking in infinite universes, because there are an infinite number of you doing the same exact thing at the same exact moment. And I mean, it could be a different place, but still, it's another version of you doing the same exact thing.
The
There's
infinite
an infinite.
fractal nature of the universe. I feel like Andy Rouse right now is just like somewhere like, yeah, it's fractals, man. But I mean, yeah, like that's pretty wild and wacky too. So that's the other part of this chapter that he's bringing to our attention. He's talking about these experiments and how science be doing stuff. And then he's like, okay, so check it out. Infinity is real. Which that's a lot to wrap your head around. I remember trying to wrestle with that myself.
As a kid, I thought of infinity as a number system, like numbers that just go on and on. But really, infinity is more of a like every past, present, and future of everything on, and everything in between, everything that never happened,
Everything that ever is, was, or will be,
or could be, or
or
could
could
have
be.
been.
Right. Absolutely. So that's a lot of stuff.
So infinity isn't numbers. Infinity is lifelines.
Yes, lifelines. And one of the things that he uses to illustrate is a graph, right? Like a graph in geometry, like it's infinite, right? And like we could chart an infinite number of dots on that grid if we wanted to, and literally every single one. So you could think of one of those specific dots on a graph as one person's perspective. That's one. And then there could be charted up to an infinite amount of perspectives. So there's really no stopping all of this. But I think what's cool about the idea of infinity and the implication of this is that instead of like in traditional self-help or new age or whatever it is, where they're like, you got to manifest your destiny or whatever. If you think about it from the alternatives model perspective, where there's infinity, then everything already exists already. It's already there. So if you're trying to, manifest your dream life or whatever, you've got to know that you don't have to create that out of thin air. It exists somewhere already in the alternative space. So the game becomes figuring out how to choose it from the alternative space and choose it or pull it into the material world.
And that's kind of what he keeps reiterating, is that, you spend your whole life thinking you have to fight for what I have to fight for this. Like I have to fight for what's mine, or what I'm going to get. And then half the time it doesn't work. But the thing is it's so simple. It's like the fighting is actually part of your problem. It's a matter of just choosing, because it already exists. That version of you that's experiencing those things already exists. You just have to choose that.
Yeah, and we're just, we're taught from such a young age that we have to fight, right? Like it's very
Yeah.
competitive out there. You can't.
Or, you've got bad genes, you're gonna have cancer because your whole family does. Like you're so subject to this, like somebody else's bullshit for your life. Like, and really it's a matter of choosing. Like I I could say now, after reality transurfing, like, and at my age, I am prettier now than I've ever been in my whole life. And it's so funny because it's just a matter of choosing to step into a whole other mannequin. Because at some point he'll get into mannequins, but it's just choosing another lifeline.
Well, I think you kind of said it even before, where you're talking about like, different versions of yourself. There could be like infinite versions of even who you are, right? So
Yeah.
if you're like, I want to choose the version of myself that corresponds to this, let's say, lifeline, because there are infinite lifelines. And this is where it gets soupy and trippy and mashed potato-y for me when it gets into the lifelines and stuff. Like
I
in the
love it.
summary, yeah. Like in the summary, I didn't even use the term lifeline once, like not once. Cause like, I don't think it really is what the point of this is. The point of this is to be able to get what you want, right? Like without
Yeah.
meditating or having to change yourself. There's nothing wrong with self-development. And he talks about that too, even in this chapter where he's like, if you don't know what your goal is, then you can make your goal yourself and then just focus on you. But, from a deep perspective, I think the idea of lifelines is very cool. But if you just understand that it's just literally infinity, it's just imagination, that's all it is, then it doesn't matter how you interpret it or what you think of it as. Like, in like, for instance, I got confused on the lifeline thing, especially around 2020 when I was like, well, why can't I just Mario jump out of this reality into one where there's not a, lockdown? You know what I'm saying? But that's not how it works, because there's only one material reality. We're all consensus contributing and involved in that material reality. Whereas in the dream space, that's completely infinite, right?
Absolutely.
But everyone in the spiritual woo-woo place, and myself included, was like, how do we jump out of here? How do we quantum jump to another timeline where we don't have to deal with this trash,
And you don't even have to. It's a matter of choice. And it's like, just because the collective is experiencing COVID-19 or whatever, doesn't mean that I have to let it control my reality. So I can actually choose, like, in my reality, I don't wear masks. And it's, I don't know. You get to choose that.
Yeah, you do. And you have to have some serious fortitude sometimes. And then there are going to be times when your hand is forced to choose certain things, between this and that. He talks about that a little bit later. But all that said, understanding that everything that you want, or whatever it is that's pleasing or desiring, you desire, it already exists. So you don't have to like create it and fight for it and, compete for it, really.
And when you're getting depressed, you can think about the alternate version of you that has a different life. I do this sometimes. I'll go, when my kids are stressing me out, I go, there is a version of me that is like successful and unmarried and has no kids, and she's really happy. Infinite versions.
Sure.
Just saying. No, I'm happy for the most part. I'm just,
No,
you just have your moments when you're like,
oh yeah. Oh no, we all do. I definitely have moments. Well, that was one of my big things too. It was like 2020 and 2021, very challenging for obviously most everybody, but especially I had some really difficult times. And it's like, you want to like learn this and internalize it, right? Like the first time you read it, you're like, it sounds a little out there. I'm not so sure that I believe this. Then you read it again, and you're like, wait, this is actually right. And then you read it again, and then you start to internalize it. But just because you read something and understand it doesn't mean that you've internalized the concepts. You know what I mean? Like, it takes years to master things. And I want to just like read something one time and then off to the races. Oh, I got it.
Yeah. But the beauty of this is that it's not like other things where you have to, I like, how many books have you started? I don't know if you do this. I do this. I'll read a book and it'll have like spiritual practices, or not necessarily spiritual. It could just be self-help stuff. But if it's something that's going to take me, like, if I have to, it's going to take me a while to do it. You will actually do it. I know you do it. But me, on the other hand, if it's something that's like going to take me longer than an hour, or on multiple days or something like that, I will get stuck at that part of the book and I don't ever continue, ever. So it's like, oh yeah, that was good, but it didn't really work for me. Like, this is the beauty of this, is that it is so simple.
Right.
So it's easy to revisit. Like, at least when you revisit it, it, you forget because you get out of practice and you don't do it, even though it's that simple. But that's why you and I both have read this book so many times.
Well, yeah, I mean, I keep coming back to it because it is easy to forget. We get swept up. I mean, the world's designed this way to drag us out of awareness. Like, that's the whole thing. We come into the world, we're kids, we have this disposition, we're having fun, we're enjoying life, we're playing, we know it's a game. And then all of a sudden, we get into our head, and our head makes it into not a game anymore. Now it's serious. This is serious shit. You got to take it seriously, and you better, screw your head on straight, bud, and stop jerking around or whatever. Right?
It's all important.
Yeah.
Everything is so important.
Such a big deal. It's a huge deal. Everything becomes a big deal. And then all of a sudden, you forget. And so, like, that's why it takes consistent practice. And I was like, think it was so funny too. It's so funny that people who are in the spiritual realm, some people that I've been around. And then, you all get together and you're like, hey, let's try something. And they're like, they don't want to because they're afraid if they try it and fail, then that means it doesn't work. But that's not what it means. It just means we hadn't figured it out yet. And sometimes you have to toy and tamper with things, it's like,
Because there is no failure, only feedback.
exactly, 100%. And people expect that you can just like jump into a magic book and do 10 years worth of work in 2 weeks. And I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
it
you
takes a lot of
can,
reprogramming your subconscious.
I mean, you can shortcut
That's
it.
what it's all about. It's about reprogramming your subconscious. And that's what's so nice about this is it's magic without the ritual.
Yeah, I mean, I would love it to hear you talk a little bit about it, like as far as your path and your progression with bodybuilding. Like, how has this kind of been influential or helpful with that? Because that's a lot of work, and you've shortcut it. You're definitely ahead of the curve as far as like what you've been able to accomplish in a short amount of time. But it's also like this is real actionable results. This is not some hoity-toity sit in a chair and then all of a sudden you're ripped, kind of thing.
Yeah, no. It takes a long time, but what I knew is that I can work hard or I could work hard and transurf it. So I was like, okay, well, obviously I'm transurfing this shit because that's what I do. So literally I sat down and just imagined the body I wanted. I wanted to be firm, smooth, curvy, hard, I pictured it and over again, and on multiple times, but I would even say those words out loud and that was it. Just a couple of seconds. That's all it takes is just to imagine it in your head, be it for a moment, feel yourself be it for a moment. And then it's there. So yeah, I did the work, but I also did the work in a very short amount of time. And I've been really successful already. And I was, what motivated me is that I had every reason to not believe in myself. I've had 5 kids. 5 children, guys. Um, I am a woman in her 40s. I was overweight. I was a smoker. I had 2 C-sections. There's all these reasons why I shouldn't have been able to do this. I had tons of cellulite, but like there with all the reasons that I should have not been able to do it, all I did was just choose that it was going to be my life and that's who I was going to be. And here I am. And it's been what, 2 years, which is not like I look better than a lot of people who've been doing it a lot longer. So
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty insane. Yeah, no, I think that's
actually February is 2 years. So I'm not even at 2
not
years
even
yet.
2 years in. So yeah. Yeah, well, how did you kind of like put yourself in that mental place? How did you kind of approach that?
Well, I've already used Reality Transurfing to do like incredible things, So I knew it was possible. And Vadim at some point will get into mannequins, and it's basically just choosing, like he's saying, it's really kind of trippy the way he explains it, but it is lifelines and stuff, except that there's all these versions of you that are inanimate more or less. They're like mannequins in the space of alternatives. So there is Abby who's a bodybuilder. There's Abby who's, I mean, just you name it. I might actually be black on some of these timelines, it
Sure.
just depends. But more or less, like the closer ones to you are going to be easier to come by, so bodybuilder wasn't exactly probably a close lifeline to what I was experiencing. Like I said, I was overweight and all these other things, but I just kept visualizing it and I owned it. I just knew it was going to be me. It was just a matter of choosing and knowing it was my life. It was going to be my reality. And then I let it go. I didn't put any importance on it. And he says, all you have to do is the first step. So the first step was going to the gym. And then I found a coach, and then I found a posing coach, and everything just happened like back to back to back. And it was all meant to be. It was because I chose it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems so simple. And I mean, in a way it is. It doesn't make it easy necessarily, but
I didn't choose. And that's the thing, is that it sounds like just being goal oriented. It's not the same as like doing a smart, measurable goal. It's not the same thing.
No, it's
It's
not the
literally
same
just
thing.
choosing, and you do the first step. I don't have to do every step in between. I don't have to plan it out, nothing. I literally just choose, and I keep that picture in my head. I keep that experience in my head, and then you become it.
Yeah, that's good. And we can talk about the mannequin thing now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
appropriate enough. It's fine. I think the way that I see that is that within every lifeline, let's say, that you have that's possible, which are infinite, then there is a corresponding avatar that goes to that lifeline, right? Like military Owen, right? Like has that avatar, that's like very GI Jane or whatever, right? Like for that particular.
Very feminine.
Hey, it's 2024. The military is woke now, but
Yeah, they don't even have don't ask, don't tell anymore. You're right.
so I don't know, but I'm just, as an example, there's basically like a version of yourself that you can embody in each one of those iterations or variations, right? And depending on how far away it is, you're going to have to do more or less work based on that, right? Like for me to get to, I don't know, like artistic painter genius version, it's going to be X amount of work based on where I'm at. And I think there's something true too, where, because he does talk about here in this first chapter, he talks about Islam and how in Islam, they say that your fate is written in the book. And if you're familiar with Islam, you understand what that means. That means your fate is destined. And so he's saying a similar thing, but there's a variation of it. So it's a little bit nuanced, but like he's saying that you do have a fate, but there are many sort of ways that you could come about that fate. There are many different sort of essences or expressions with the same essence, I guess is what I mean to say. I made a video about this last week and put it out where he's talking about how if you see the same play 2 nights in a row, it'll be slightly different. You see the same play twice in the same place. Well, if you change the set and scenery of that same play, and then you go and see that at a church gym, or you go and see it at, Carnegie Hall, or you go and see it at a theater in the Midwest, it's going to have a different cast. It's going to have a different director. It's going to be a completely different scene. So depending on where you are, it's going to be the same play. So the essence is the same, whatever that is. If it's Romeo and Juliet, it's still going to be Romeo and Juliet. The lines are basically the same and all of that. The essence of the play is the same. The morals of the story is there. But it's going to be a different expression of whatever that essence is. So there is an element of fate in this book, and he's proposing it that we do have a fate and a goal that's unique to us, that our heart really does come into this world to experience, but that could take many different forms. And he teases the forward to the past thing a little bit in this chapter. It's like
I'm so like
I've read this book. Yeah.
Just
like
recently.
A
I'm
lot
like,
of times
I need to go
recently.
back through it.
Yeah, but like the forward to the past thing is like, it's one of the later chapters, but basically it's kind of saying the same. It's like, so for instance, right? Like sometimes I might feel like I miss my calling, let's say, because when I was a kid, I was obsessed with like Saturday Night Live and improv comedy and sketch comedy. I thought it was so fun and funny. And I really had a inclination toward that sort of as an art form. So I could have, when I was much younger, pursued that as a hobby and, gotten into that at an earlier age and had a different sort of outcome and been doing comedy and I might be in New York or Chicago or who knows, Japan, whatever, and doing that sort of thing. But I didn't really start doing comedy until like I was 36 years old and writing sketches with my friends and doing like a silly radio show, which got me into doing stand-up. And then I started doing more improv and things like that. Well, the essence is the same. right? Like, and I realized the other day, actually, because like a lot of comedians, they're lucky, I think, to have like a home club. Like if you work out of the Comedy Store, if you work out of the Comedy Cellar in New York, or out, or the wherever, Laugh Factory, name it, then that's like your home club, and that's cool. You got a home club, like that's nice. But we don't have that here. But what we do have is a whole city, and like all of our local comedians and stuff, we all collaborate and work together. And we don't have a home club, but we also don't have to worry about paying overhead for a bar or dealing with all of that kind of nonsense. If a place shuts down, we can just dip out and go to another place and start a show there. So it's kind of a neat position to be in, because we do have a home, but the home is not a specific club. And I was kind of having a stressful day the other day, and I messaged the group chat with all the comedians in there, and I said, "Hey guys, I just got us a new open mic for Mondays at this place called Cozy Bar, which is like, it's perfect for an open mic." And I was like, "I'm busy. Can somebody make a flyer?" And everybody started making flyers and posting them. And they were all like really silly. Like one was just a picture of a cat that just said comedy show. Lanny made that one. Another one had a picture of Mitch McConnell, and the information was even wrong on the flyer. But I opened up Instagram, and we have like, that's where our group chat is. And I opened it up, and I was like coming home, and I was like kind of in a huff and kind of stressed out from the day. And as soon as I opened up that chat and saw all those flyers, there were like 5 or 6 different flyers, and they were all ridiculous and absurd. I just started dying laughing. Like I was like kicking laughing in my car, it made me feel so good. And I really needed that laugh. But it's like things like that make me realize, right? Like, yeah, sure, I could be at some prestigious venue, and that could be like the home deal, and it has all this status and stuff, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like this is just as good, or maybe even better in some ways, right? Like the essence is still there. It's still the same. Like we got a little tribe, a community of people who are interested in doing comedy. And yeah, I mean, we're not going to compete with New York or some, scene like that. But honestly, like the Athens comics crush pretty hard, and we have we have a lot of people come from out of town, and I think they're usually pretty damn impressed, because not only is there just a lot of talent here, but we also, as a community, we'll help each other, and we're more open to that. And I think a lot of other communities are a little bit more competitive. But I say all that to say, the idea of fate, where you do kind of have a fate, but the way that fate, let's say, materializes or is expressed, like that essence is there, and it's going to be there. You're going to find your way to that fate, but it may take on a different form, from what you would immediately think. So when you say, I just choose, and then I go this direction, I don't have to worry about these goals. They're not important. That's exactly right. Because everyone else is probably going to get swept up in what it's supposed to look like on the exterior, right? Like, oh, this house is blue. Well, who cares what color it is? You know what I mean? Like, it's a house, you know what I mean? Like, that's what you are going for.
Unless you're in Maui, and you might want your house to be blue, because it might still exist.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Oprah, she's got painters, but yeah, the point is that like, it's really about the essence of the thing more so than it is about whatever that specific material sort of content is. It's less about the content and more about the quality.
But what struck me this time, though, is that he's talking about how everything has, everything radiates energy, plants included. And if you can't accept that, then you're like, but you've got to know that everything works towards helping you achieve that once you choose. So even the plants, because whatever energy you intake, like even when you're being shitty, if you're being shitty and you intake energy, then you're putting out negative energy, and everything around you feels the vibration. But it works the same way. So if I choose a better lifeline, if I choose a better life for myself, if I choose a higher, reality, then everything around me works because the vibration that I'm putting out now. So it's what I've chosen, what I visualize, and what I know and accept to be true. So it's the same idea of praying in faith. Like, this is really the true version of that. So like Jesus said, like, when you pray, don't pray in supplication. Don't ask for anything. Know you have it, because that's all it is just knowing that you have it, that it exists, and that it's mine, and I claim it. So I will walk into that. It might take me a little bit, but it'll probably be a lot faster than any of you guys are going to work your ass off for it, and you might not even get it. But I've chosen it. So it comes down to literally like, I've decided, and so it is.
Yeah.
Period.
Simple. Yeah. But it's so easy for us to get hung up on the external sort of decorations, right? So
Yeah.
instead of concerning ourselves with what is the quality of the play, right? The quality of the play is whatever your fate is, right? Like, let's say it's Romeo and Juliet. It doesn't matter if it's like performed in the Buckhead Theater or, you know
Or
what I'm
they
saying?
said it in the 1940s, or it's in medieval times. Yeah,
Sure.
it's
No, none of
still
those. Yeah, none
Romeo
of
and
those things
Juliet.
matter. You've already chosen, and then you just have to walk it out at that point. It's just about taking those next steps. And I've found this too to be just really practical. So if there's something that you want to be good at specifically, then don't make a goal to be good at it. Like, for instance, and here's a simple example. I heard someone talking about this and it's really stuck with me. It's like, if you want to lose 20 pounds, then most people will make a goal to lose 20 pounds. And what happens after they lose that 20? They put it right back on plus 10 more. And that's generally what happens. So they have created a goal and they've attained their goal, and then they have lost it afterward. Well, if you just create a process instead, then you don't have to worry about the goal. The goal comes about automatically. And it's just not something that you have to concern yourself with. If you're like, I'm going to walk 10,000 steps a day or whatever, fill in the blank, right? Like, I'm going to go to the gym and do a cold plunge every day. Then you do that, you keep doing that. And it doesn't matter if you're 180 pounds or 150 pounds or whatever, you just keep doing that thing. Then the results will come automatically by themselves. It's just I think it's a smarter and healthier approach. You're less likely to beat yourself up too.
Well, okay, so speaking of that, I just want to talk about this, even though it's not necessarily reality transurfing related, but your subconscious, when you say you've lost something or you want to lose something, so like, I lost X amount of weight, your brain always wants to fix that for you. That's why you gain the weight back,
Hmm.
because you lost it. So it's helping you find it.
Hmm.
So it's better, programming wise, to program your own subconscious to say, I want to lean out, and not put a number on it. Just saying.
Yeah, no, I
Just
couldn't agree
practical
more.
advice for everyone.
Yeah, no, that's what this is about. This is a practical book. It gets more and more practical. Like,
Mhm.
we're dancing with infinity in the beginning of it, right? And then I keep reading it more and more, and I'm like, this is just common sense. You know, every time I read it, it gets more practical. Because it's like, I swear to God, the first time I read it, I was like, this is far out, man. Wow, this is crazy shit, man. Woo, oh boy, it's woo woo. But it's not. It's not woo woo at all. It's common fucking sense. And
Well,
it's scientific.
the common sense is what sold me on it, because I was not a, like, ugh, I could not handle any of the woo-woo shit. I could not handle, like, new agey crap at all. It I don't know. It was so practical to me. It was so smart, it was scientific, and it didn't, like, compete with Christianity. So I was able to, like, "Oh, yeah, okay, I get this. This works."
Yeah, and it definitely works. That's the really funny part about it too, because like, it works positive and negative.
It does, the negative part, like, but it's you've been doing the negative part already, so it's not that you have to worry about learning this. You have to learn that you have been the problem in your life the whole time.
Yeah, the common denominator is us ourselves.
Yeah,
100%.
we fuck ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, we have this disposition, this conception of what we think reality is, and we consistently prove it to ourselves every day, day in and day out. And one of the things he says in this chapter too is that if your thought quality is consistent, then you stay at the same place. And then if it goes down or up, then your reality shifts and changes based on that. So, and that's tricky too, because it's easy to get caught in those loops, whatever it is that you're used to, those habits and the way that you feel emotionally in those thought loops. Like, it's very, very easy to just continue that as a habit. So you have to be proactive in order to consistently monitor your thoughts.
And your words, because your words are, the word is God, right? So your words are so important. Kind of the whole Neville Goddard of it all. Anything you say after I am is very powerful.
I mean, a lot of people really, between this book and Neville Goddard, that's a lot of people. I never really liked Neville. I don't know why. It just never did it for me. Because like everything he says is like a metaphor in the Bible for yourself, which I think is a pretty interesting take. And I think you can make an argument for that as just like one of the reflections of the truth of it.
I loved it because it was so short. I didn't like how religious it was, but it was religious in the sense that you're coming into your own, like, I am my Father are one. That's the one big take I took from it. Like, Jesus said, I and my Father are one. Like, he is God, but he's told you that you are too. So, and that's pretty profound, which is what Reality Transurfing teaches you too, more or less. That you are a particle of God, every single one of you. And that you're God experiencing God as Bootsy Greenwood, and whoever you are or whatever you are, plants too. It's all God.
Oh, that's
Everything
crazy.
man-made is God. It's all God.
100%.
It's all source.
Yeah. I was all into animism like in college, and I'm like, I'm still into it, dude. Because like a friend of mine actually sent me a video this morning on how plants communicate to each other. They totally do. So they're just
like the trees talk and all of that too.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's all communicating. Like they give each other signals, and in the form of even aroma and stuff like that. Like they talk in all kinds of different ways. It's all connected. Anyway, can't not be.
No, it's like reading a room, like, because we can do it too, obviously. Like everyone thinks, actually I was just talking about this with the Secret Society of Good Guys. Like everybody says that they're an empath, but everyone's an empath. You should be able to read the energy of anyone pretty easily if you're observant.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But at the same time, you don't need to take on their energy and deal with what they got to deal with, right? Like, that's not your fight? You know what I mean? Like,
no, it's easy enough to get caught up in the downward spiral of all, which we're not even at downward spirals, but
yeah. Well, yeah, just because you're an empath, that just makes it easier for you to get sucked into a pendulum,
yeah,
Welcome to it.
absolutely.
You got to resist that shit. Fuck that.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, he says right here, even in the summary, every organism contributes to the creation of material realization. It's like later on in the book, he says every living thing has a goal. Everything has a goal, and it's all trying to reach its goal. That's how he kind of that's how he talks about, I guess, evolution. Because like evolution is so empty. There's not a real reason why. It's just like, oh, well, evolution. It's like, okay, great, but why? Why evolution? Well, because everything has a goal. Everything is working toward whatever that goal is, and ourselves included.
It reminds me of, okay, this is kind of a morbid story, but my friend's dog growing up, like they'd have it chained up in the backyard and it would hop up on top of his doghouse and try to jump over like the privacy fence, the neighbor's privacy fence. And I remember, it would do this for years. It would jump up on top of his doghouse, try to jump over the fence over and over and over again. So Sorry, I'm an inappropriate laugher. But I think it's a good story. Everybody else doesn't see it that way. One day she calls me and she's crying, and her dog's name was Bill, and she said, "Oh my God, Bill hung himself." And I was like, she didn't understand why I was not sad about it. Like, I was like, Holly, he has tried to do that for years. He finally reached his goal. It was kind of amazing. I was like, I can't believe he finally did it.
Savage, dude.
I know, but I was so happy for Bill. Honestly, I was happy for him.
Well, I
I thought
mean,
that it was really cool.
yeah.
What a way to go, He accomplished. I know, but he accomplished his goal. It was kind of badass.
Right on. No, I mean, oh man, 100%.
She was mad at me.
But yeah, absolutely.
It was tragic. Don't get me wrong, but I mean,
sure.
yeah.
But I mean, it's appointed to us all. It's going to happen, and that's another
It
reason.
is.
That's another reason to go out there and meet your friends in real life, and go and hang out and do different things that you otherwise wouldn't, or your mind would be like, well, that's not practical. You're in your 40s and you've already had 5 children. So why do you want to be a bodybuilder? That's not practical. And you listen to your heart. And you were saying
everyone has to hate their body, right? That's just normal. Everyone hates their body, and you should never get a chance to love it.
That's dark.
It is dark, but that's where, how many people feel that way though. Like, everybody hates their body. Almost everyone does. And so, like, what is it going to take for you to decide that you should get to love it once in this lifetime?
That's a good
Just
question.
choosing to do it, What's it going to take? Visualize it, make it what you want it to be.
I love that. He was trying to get to the island. Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, you got a good point there. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Like, because later in the book, he talks about sex and how like people front so hard about sex. And like, if we were to have a stadium full of people and all the people who had some sort of sexual, I'm trying to think of what the right word is, hang up, I guess it would be everyone in the whole stadium, maybe minus 1 or 2 people. The same thing is true with our body. Most people are insecure about at least some part of their body. Sometimes predictably, but that makes sense. Like, why not try to figure out a way to enjoy it, right? See it in a way, but you can still, even, what is it? Body dysmorphia. You can still be like perfect and then still hate your body.
I still experience dysmorphia, but the level is different. Like, I know to the average person, I look amazing. But the part of me that always wants to be better and wants to strive to be better wants to be better. So there's always room for improvement. So it's like it's what keeps me going.
No, that's good. Yeah, you got to have some sort of a thing, right? It's that way in anything, right? Like, you take comedy, you start out early and you see somebody do pretty well and they're like, oh, that was funny. You got some laughs. You're like, I just want to get some laughs. And then you can do that. And you're like, then you see somebody kill and you're like, I want to do that. And then you see these people, you keep wanting to climb the ladder.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I think you make a good point. It's gotten to that point for me now where I'm going to the gym and like just wanting to feel. I just want to feel better. I just want to feel good. And then, yeah, it would be nice to, be able to.
Yeah. I mean, everyone deserves to experience it. And that's kind of, I was so tired of feeling unhappy about it. And so that was kind of my thought. And it's with anything, you know, um, because love for other people always comes from loving yourself first, and that not in a freaking narcissistic way or anything like that. Just literally like giving yourself the love that you deserve and not seeking it in other people. So if you're doing that and choosing better for yourself, then you're able to love others better, I think. So
Yeah, I completely understand and agree with that. Like that's been something that I've honestly struggled with a lot. Because I think we want to give and show people love. Like that's like an innate human need. But for some of us, it's a lot easier to show other people love than it is ourselves. But once we can turn that love inward, start to love ourselves a little bit more, then all of a sudden it does become easier and we love on other people better as a result of giving ourselves that attention and that energy. It's been really hard for me to shift. Actually, Janine told me in a reading, she was like, you got to start making time for yourself. Because at the time I was coaching and I was coaching a few people, and their problems were first and foremost in my mind and in my world, right? Like if somebody hit me up with a text and they had an issue, well, I focused on that. And my problems faded into the background. I didn't deal with my problems. But now when I wake up in the morning, because of that reading with Janine and her advice, I do my writing first. I take care of, the things that I need to do first before I do anything else. And then I don't know, every once in a while the phone rings or something crazy happens, right? But like I give myself, and right about that same very time, I was integrating a bunch of stuff when we were talking about some things. And I kept having these different dreams. Like I told you about one of them where I was like going into this murky like lake and picking up body parts that was me. And then I had another dream later. This is me integrating stuff. And then I had another dream that I was babysitting my parents' kids, which were almost certainly both me. And at the end of that dream, like the little girl gave me a big hug and said, thank you. It was like, I took the time to pay attention to myself, and to give myself the time and attention to work on me, right? Like, and so because of that, it builds me up, and then I'm able to help other people more, and I can give them that advice, like give yourself the gift of like paying attention to yourself, and like whatever that looks like. If it means waking up and writing morning pages, which is my practice, then do that, like just do it. Or whatever that is, a meditation or a yoga or go to the gym. It doesn't matter. It could be anything or multiple things. Like there's a lot of things in the artist way that I think are very usable and take withable from there. But it could be a walk, anything. But you gotta make time, for you, and put yourself first and love on yourself. It's important.
see, that's one of those books for me. Like I enjoyed it, and it was like the practices are fairly simple. When I got to the artist date, you're supposed to take yourself on an artist date once a week. That was where I was like, yeah, I couldn't do it. Like I didn't make it past that part.
That part is kind of hard, admittedly, because you got to make time for it. But I really enjoyed that part. Like I went to like Banksy exhibition, and I went to like a bunch of different art exhibitions and stuff. And I don't do those anymore as much. Every once in a while, like I'll sit down and watch a movie. Like it's insane. Like I tried to log in on Sunday. I was like, or maybe it was Monday. I was like, oh, I'm just going to sit and watch a movie. And I tried to log in because I had all these different apps logged in, like Netflix and Hulu and stuff. It's been so long since I've logged into any of those. No idea. I had to watch the Roku channel. You know what I'm saying? Like that's,
Dang.
yeah. And it was like, I started watching a movie and then I just took a nap. I was like, I don't even.
You didn't even do the forgot password thing?
I didn't even get to that part, because it was other people's logins that I had that were logged in here. And it just had been so long that they logged me all out because I didn't never watch anything, but I try to do something. And like watching a movie is an artist date as far as I'm concerned, because like that's a cool, like if you, but I'm very hesitant too, because like the last thing I want to do is waste 2 hours of my time on, you know, some shitty movie that is just gonna steal time away from me. I could have been doing something or watching something that would have been good. And it's like I don't really want to watch something that I've already seen before because I've already seen it, you know. So I want to watch something new, but I don't want to watch something that is gonna suck. If you know.
Yeah, but that's just how it is when you watch movies and TV on.
I know, but movies and TV now.
It's a chance you take.
Yeah, it is. You got to take the risk. I get that, but I just like, especially now with the stuff. I don't know. Movies have just gotten horrible at this point. They're all just superhero movies.
Number 24.
Right, with like 17 different superheroes in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's like brainwashing, like trying to teach you that someone's going to save you and nobody's coming. You got to save yourself, dude.
You're your own fucking hero. That's the whole point of reality transurfing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need anyone to save you.
Nope.
God's not even going to save you. You got to choose it yourself.
Yeah, because like we were saying before, you know, like why would God pray to himself? Why would God beg himself for something? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh, that's the part I love too in this chapter. He talks about why would God, the omnipotent God who knows everything you're going to do, why would he even bother punishing you?
Right. Right. It seems like he's just like he's this
like
ultimately
he sits around
powerful,
waiting to punish you.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's really good at parenting.
But he knows you're going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. He's really bad at
He
parenting.
created you to do it. He's a really bad parent. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
You punish yourself. That's the whole biggest lesson, is that you create your own punishment and you create your own blessings.
Yep. It's true. I know it so well because like being from the South, guilt is like a side dish with every single, you know, chicken dinner. You know, it's just like it's such a powerful manipulative tool and force, and people use it very often here. So as coming up from a very young age, you know, guilt was a strong motivator for all of us. So you have to learn not to punish yourself, you know, and whenever it is that you do screw up or whatever, like don't even let that bother you. Like just be like, yep, I did that thing. Nothing wrong with it. Just keep moving forward. That's why that's why this book is like, if you were like a narcissist or a sociopath, this book is kind of dangerous. And
yeah, in the wrong hands it is, for sure.
Because they don't have that sweeping sense of guilt, you know, or if they take advantage of someone or hurt somebody, like to them, that's great. Like it doesn't matter because it gets them what they want.
I always go back to Scarface when I think about the section of this book on guilt, because I'm like, you know, I don't even think that he had any issues until other people started laying into him and he let it kind of trickle in a little bit. Because if you don't have guilt, and it's such a powerful chapter, really, because you do have to stop punishing yourself. Like we're the only species that not only do we, you know, experience the punishment for whatever we did wrong one time, we mentally punish ourselves thousands of times or more, because it could be something you did when you were little, and you think about it. And then we let our friends and family punish us too, because every time they bring it up and want to give you a guilt trip. So it's like God don't have to do a damn thing. He ain't trying to freaking punishing you. You're punished by your own guilt, and you allow it because because everyone and their dad wants to freaking continue punishing you. But that doesn't happen with dogs. It doesn't happen with raccoons. We're like the only species that does this shit.
Yeah, it's true. No, we are the only species that can create importance, right? Like that's really what it ultimately kind of comes down to, I think. Mm-hmm. Which we'll definitely get into. You know, he's talking about how like a cheetah doesn't feel bad for killing an antelope for dinner. Like that's just what it does.
A cheetah's got to eat.
A cheetah's got to eat to survive. Absolutely 100%. That's just...
Fish has got to swim. Sharks got to eat.
That's right. That's it. So we could put a pin in this with some of the little summary notes, I think, maybe, if that sounds okay to you.
Let's do it.
And if you want to break in, just break in.
Okay.
And feel free to, expound if you'd like. I'll just read a couple of these. Variability being the world's most fundamental quality. We definitely touched on that. And it's manifest in an infinite variety of forms. Vadim says that any model of the universe represents just one manifestation of reality. And so I guess this is why philosophy is such a crazy, crazy bitch, because like there's so many different philosophies that are awesome. Like we were talking on Sunday night, up late talking with the boys. You know how it is. We're talking philosophy. That's how it is. And Will read this G.K. Chesterton quote about how Marcus Aurelius had a selfless ego, or an ego of selflessness, and how Stoicism, which I have a lot of admiration and respect for, but you can shoot holes in that too. G.K. Chesterton was like, yeah, they built the world, but don't have any, but they're passionless and unable to enjoy it, which is pretty hot dart. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine, you're the stoic who does all of these things, but you're so rented out that you don't actually ever get to enjoy any of the fruit of the labor itself. Stoicism is a great philosophy. I'm not saying anything really negative about it, other than the fact that like we can always shoot holes in any branch of knowledge, right? Like none of them are complete. And yeah, as much as I love Stoicism, like
they just explain a layer.
Eat a pizza.
It's not inaccurate. Yeah.
Eat a pizza, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's okay. It's okay to eat a pizza. It's okay to take a nap. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with it, like enjoying yourself, like enjoying. So that's the one thing, or that's one of the things that Stoicism, for instance, is missing. But that's his point, is that any branch of knowledge, it really bases itself on one aspect. And so it will miss other aspects.
Because it's all variable.
Exactly. The alternative space is an information field recording all that was, is, and ever will be. It contains all potential alternative scenarios to any event, and each alternative has a script and scenery. No.
So it's like the whole West world of it all, where, okay, we walk into, like, he calls it highlighting sectors of the space of alternatives. But when you highlight that sector, it has like, it's like on Westworld, when you walk in, you interact with one of the hosts, the AI, the robots, and they have like 5 scripts. Okay, walk into the set. This is what's going to happen. A, B, C, or D, depending on how you act, and that's same idea. Each space has its own scripts and what's going to happen.
Yep. It's
script and scenery.
Script and scenery is exactly what he calls it. Yep. That's exactly right. Then he says that space can be divided into sectors, and each sector contains an alternative scenario of an event. So kind of like what we were talking about with the one play, but it's like this play is played over here in Alabama with a bunch of, actors with an accent, and then it's played at Carnegie Hall, but then it's played, at this other place. The essence is the same, but each one has a different like manifestation or kind of like expression within it. So the fate or the idea is there, it's embedded in it, but the further away you go in the space of alternatives, the more different that it looks, like materially. Yeah. Which is cool. It's a cool thought. And like one of the things that I remember when we were first kind of learning this model, people would ask, you to draw what they feel like the space of variations looks like. Does anything come to mind on how do you personally see or interpret the field of infinity or alternative space, Abby?
Well, now that I've been dream mapping, it's like, yeah. I mean, because my layer, it's all the same place, so the dream space is it's the place. But in my head, I go a few different places because, if you've heard of the Akashic, then that is the Akashic. The Akashic is not like, it's more like a 3D model. He calls it like a film archive. But I think of it more as less of a like library of sorts and a film archive. I see it more like just from mapping my own dreams, like actually doing dream cartography. That on my dream map, I could enter a house that's on my dream map that I could put on the street, and I know the name of the street and everything. But when I go into that house, it might take me. It's actually located. Okay, so I can map up on my map, my normal map, but that house is like a portal into like Cambodia. So each house is not necessarily the house itself, it's the door or gateway to another area. So I just kind of see it like, to me, it's like that. You can look at it as different life tracks. You can see it as different, many different ways, but I just see it as multi-layered. Like Cambodia doesn't exist on, 624 Newlands Drive. It just happens to be that's where the portal is on my space of the world. My sector of the space of variations that I frequent.
I like it. We got some answers in the chat too that I like. Carla says a waving particle. That's trippy. I like it. And then Zephyr says a collage database, which I really like. And clip art reality.
That's what's up.
Yep. I like it. Yeah, I've always kind of seen it in my head as like a bunch of like branches, like a tree with a bajillion different branches, and like every branch forks with choice. And so you're like choice that goes here to here to here. But there's like so many ways, and the film roll archive is great. Like that's a really useful visual as well.
I think when I first saw it as like highways, or really more, I saw it more like a skate park. Like you could skateboard like up on this ramp, or you can take the lower one, but it's the same idea. It's the whole fractal of it all. Because every choice splits off. Every choice you've ever made in your life is a split. That's a whole other lifeline. So that's just choosing, pepperoni or pineapple.
And pineapple just doesn't belong on pizza. Let's not get into this. This is gonna ruin our relationship. No.
Boo. I like pineapple on pizza.
Oh, well. We're not gonna be back next week, everybody. No. No, but no, the implications, and that's what's crazy about it. It's like the implications of that choice. And our mind is trying to suss out all of the different like consequences of a specific single choice. And it's like you're never going to be able to figure that out. But it could literally be as simple of like the butterfly effect, as simple of a choice of walking through this door or that door, or opening it with your left or right hand, that just changes everything. It's insane.
It really is. But yeah, that brings me back to the whole like chains of it all. The chain of events leading up to your event.
Yeah, we'll get into that for sure.
Yeah.
He says that material realization moves through the space like a bundle of density. And there is one specific example that he talks about is the water pipe flow. And that was something when I first read the book, I just could not wrap my head around this idea of the water pipe. But I went over it in one of my more recent videos, and I could do just kind of a brief.
Yeah. Will you? Because I'm a little bit. I didn't finish the chapter.
No, that's cool. Like he mentions that, and like basically, this is a metaphor for how reality is materialized, right? Like I much prefer the word materialized to manifest, you because of the woo woos. But but basically, if you think about a water pipe with water flowing through it, and yeah, rendering reality as we go, that's really what he's talking about in this particular example. Um, he's saying that if you take a frozen water pipe, it's frozen on the outside, but there's water moving through the pipe. Okay. All that water is moving through the pipe. That's all the information of the is, was, and ever will be. That's all the alternatives, like information, data. It's not materialized, it's water. But around the cooling ring of the pipe, it's frozen there. So water's going and brushing up against that pipe. And as it brushes up against it, the coldness of the pipe creates ice crystals that are materialized in the water. So those are the materializations or manifestations of the water coming through the pipe. So it took me, I don't know, 5 years to understand that metaphor. It's really a pretty simple metaphor, but I had such a hard time wrapping my head around it, but I'm pretty sure that's what he's saying. So choice is, in that case, the frost. That is the frost that is creating the ice crystals from the water in that particular example, the metaphor of the water pipe. So yeah, so all of those things exist, all those options and alternatives and infinite possibilities. And whenever we choose, we crystallize whatever it is that we're choosing into the material reality.
Okay, I really like that. But what I'm thinking here is that, and this is obviously true too, that even without consciously choosing, you're always choosing. So you are always creating what's happening to you. So you either can choose consciously or you can choose unconsciously and get what you get. And then you're totally subject to fate. You're totally subject to somebody else's script.
I think that's exactly right. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether, for whatever reason, the water in the pipe, it doesn't matter. It's going to materialize, right? And it's like, are we going to consciously materialize it, like you're saying, or are we just going to let it materialize? And then we're at the choice of it. It's like so many of us in consensus reality, let's say in a couple of years ago, so many people allowed that script to happen that there really was no way to avoid it, in that reality. So that's what materialized. That's what crystallized. And so like all these mass formation psychosis and these big mega rituals and all that kind of stuff, that's what it's all aimed at. It's all aimed at putting humanity on a specific script.
Broadcasting.
Yeah.
They're broadcasting a spell.
Exactly. That's what it's for. It's creating those materializations in our shared consensus reality. That's what it's all aimed at. But all it takes is enough of us to just completely disengage from that script and create our own script. You know what I'm saying? Like that's literally all it takes. It's
That's
really not
what
that
I
hard.
felt like I had to do with like the whole book of Revelation and biblical prophecy stuff, end times theology. Because end times theology, like, well, I just feel like you see it definitely with like books like 1984 and any of these dystopian novels and movies and stuff like that, Ender's Game, all of those. You start seeing it manifest in reality in some way, shape, or form. But you see it a lot with the religious books because there are so many people practicing those religions. And so they get so caught up in it. And I was one of them. I was so caught up in end times theology that's all I was seeing. I was seeing all the signs about how the end of the world was coming. And, you know, once I started learning this stuff, I realized I had to unplug from that, not just for my own personal well-being, but also because once you realize how powerful you are, that you do create your own reality, you realize that you're responsible. You play a part in the collective. So you are responsible for that too. So what you let in and what you decide is horrible and what you decide is going to happen, and these dystopian outcomes that you buy into or that you allow to pass through your psyche because you're just reading about it and you get emotional even in a fictional context, you are doing your part to help create that.
Yep.
So it's your job to watch this kind of stuff or read it with your active observer and not let it get you emotional and not let it make you think that the world is going to shit, because taking that black pill, you are creating more shit for everyone.
Yeah, yeah, you're bringing us closer to it, right? And so
Yeah.
like these prophecies and stuff, I think that, and I've gone on tirades about this, about how like everything, all these, they're all death cults. Every single one, even New Age is a death cult because they're like, oh, we have to create a new earth. And for the new earth to unfold, the old earth has to be destroyed. No, it fucking doesn't. I don't know why you think that. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say. No, it doesn't. We have to just sabotage everything, ourselves and everything, the whole world. No, shut up. What is wrong with you? Why are you so obsessed with watching the world crumble? These are prophecies that are old as like thousands of years old. But honestly, it's like a mental virus in the collective consciousness, that's pushing us toward this horrible set of circumstances that does not have to happen. I don't care who said that. I don't care if Bashar puts on his little Hawaiian shirt and tells you, that you're not being present enough, that these things have to happen, or the Galactic Federation phoned it in. It's such bullshit, and it pisses me off. So I won't go on another tirade, but I'm just,
No, I kind of like it. Get
it's
mad, Owen.
it's just frustrating because that's like putting a stick in the spoke of progress, right? Like we could be moving toward amazing things. It's like, I'm old enough to remember going into the year 2000, right? Remember Y2K and all that.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing where we had literally like gallons of water in our basement and stuff, preparing for that. And honestly,
Well,
things were going really well. And then 2001, kind of put things in a different, on a much, much different path. Right. And everybody jumped on that path. Like, oh, we got to get them, and now look at the shift between where we were and where we wound up going. So
one of
prophecies
my
don't have to
favorite,
come true.
they don't. But, you create reality. You guys are all more powerful than you know. And, to quote Cheney, and I like what she says, and it sticks with me, and I think about it all the time, is that rising water raises all ships.
100%.
So if I'm building myself up and I'm actually doing my part in my part of the world to grow and be better, then by nature of it, then I'm going to help you too. The rising water rising my ship is also going to raise your ship.
100%. I know. I love that quote because the sort of
There's enough for all of
there's
us.
more than enough. Yes. And like when I was talking about our community here, like that's kind of how it is. We'll go out and we'll talk about jokes and help each other punch their jokes up and stuff. Whereas you've got the opposite of that scenario is the crabs in a bucket, right? And it's like that is how a lot of people are, and it's not even intentional. It's completely subconscious. But if you go and you're like, I'm going to become a bodybuilder. And then somebody's like, no, that's not who you are to me. I'm going to drag you down because that doesn't make sense in my mind about who you are. And you can't do that. So I'm going to pull you down back into the bucket, right? Like if there's one crab in a bucket, it'll get right out. But if there's 3 crabs in a bucket, none of them will get out because the other ones keep pulling themselves back into the bucket. So that's the other side of that, and which is very common, but keep it in mind from that standpoint, like a rising tide rises all ships. It's like, if I do well, that's good for you. It helps us all. If you do well, that's good for me. It helps us all. A rising tide rises all ships. I love that. And then it shifts us all to think in a different way. Right. And then we're materializing different stuff. because that radiation of thought energy is what materializes the alternative in the
Because
model.
it permeates everything from, you know, your environment that seems like it's inanimate, and your the plants around and the little insects, all of it.
Absolutely.
Then your world is working, all of it's working towards your greater good.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and there's, there's going to be things that happen. We'll talk about this next time because Paulo Suelo has this beautiful quote where it's like, whenever you set out to do something, the universe conspires to help you. Basically, I'm butchering the quote, but there's another force that is in operation as well, that whenever you set out to do something, it tries to knock you off course. So you got both of these kind of working for you and against you. But we'll get into that a little bit next week when we talk about pendulums. And I'll leave it with this final little quote here that he says that you don't have to fight for happiness. You simply have to choose an alternative reality that is more to your liking. And that's what we've been talking about. And that's what we've been talking about today. Yeah. Word. And so next week we'll talk about
mic drop.
Oh. Yeah, there you go. So next week we'll talk about pendulums. And yeah, so yeah, you are on the right path. You can't not be. It's impossible not to be. That's the ironic twist. But yeah, like I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about more of the deeper stuff. But every time I get into this book, it just gets more and more clear, and then I can actively work on and experiment with some of the concepts. And a lot of people have asked me that too, and I've probably learned a lot more from mistakes than I have from successes. But they ask me a lot, like, can you demonstrate, give us an example from your life? And I will be giving examples from my life, especially some fuck ups, because there's quite a few of those. Specifically the 2020 was a tough year, 28 and going into 2021 for me, because I was biting on that apocalypse stuff. I was like, here it is. We're here. It's over. We're on the this thing. And I bought it hook, line, and sinker. And what did my reality look like? It looked like the end of the world.
Show?
It was awful. Yeah. I was just like, fuck it. I'm just going to eat ice cream at 3 p.m. I don't care. And I did.
Yeah, that's when I got kind of fat.
Yeah, I got pretty, yeah, definitely. I'm just now overcoming that, but it's good. It's good to, it's like we said earlier, there's no failure, there's feedback. And when we set out to learn a new model, when we set out to do a ritual or try something new or different, it's not always going to have perfect results the first time. Isn't it crazy that we think that? I'm talking from my own perspective. I'm like, oh, I read this book. Now I know how to do this. It's like, no, you don't. You just read it in a book. You haven't incorporated it or put it into your subconscious mind yet. It takes quite some time to be able to internalize knowledge. It doesn't happen just by reading a book one time. So, it's been for me over 10 years of reading self-help and other types of spiritual books and stuff. And this is the one that really tied the room together for me. And I've been reading it for about 8 years. So I feel like I'm just now starting to be able to use the concepts more consistently. It's like sometimes I would be using them and I'd be knowing about it and be like, yeah, I fucking got it. But then all of a sudden, you forget and you get swept up into a pendulum before you even realize what happened. You're screaming in traffic, or something. You're like, what the hell happened to me? But anyway.
The law of hypnotic rhythm. I love how those go hand in hand.
I do too. Yeah, that's a great book too. If people don't know it, highly recommend checking out Outwitting the Devil. You can find it on YouTube and just listen to the interview with the devil. It's done very well.
It's amazing.
But yeah, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that because it really goes in well with
Well, I think we should. It ties together really well.
for
So.
next week. Yeah, that's really ideal.
Which means I might need to listen to that one too.
That one's only it's not
Just
as long.
proactive. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, awesome, y'all. Thank you so much for coming to hang out today. It was fun. Really enjoyed
Thank
it.
you.
Got a little fundamental foundation building here. And this was like a lot of the theory. I guess pendulums will be
It
some
gets
theory,
better.
but yeah, it definitely gets better. So thanks for hanging out. Y'all are awesome. Love it that you come and kick it in the chat. Much love, peace, many blessings. And yeah, check it out. It was a good one. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one. Much love.
Love you, Layla.